and it all seemed to be going so well too. Okay, so it didn't quite happen that way, but it sure as heck felt like it. I'd spent the previous day meticulously planning and preparing for this, which was going to be my very first delivery using the S060 steam locomotive. A quick trip over to the station office identified a suitable job for me, and then I went and located the carriages that I would be using for that delivery. After that, then it was a matter of going back and having a good night's sleep so that we could get ready for the exciting trip ahead. I awoke early the next morning and proceeded to do my final preparations for the day, including checking the weather and also the route map. After that, it was a matter of heading off to the loco to get it prepared for the journey. I fired it up, and whilst the pressure was rising, also maintained and lubricated the engine as well, so that we would have everything perfect for our trip ahead. And then, once the pressures were up, it was time to advance the reverser, open the cylinder drain cocks, and open the throttle as we started moving to pick up our first load. The serene peacefulness of the morning was shattered by the scream of my coupling rods as the engine moved from its cold and dark state for the first time. I don't know why, after having lubricated the engine, it was giving off such a noise, but still, other than that, it sounded quite happy, and we were glad to be on our way. Now that we've successfully been able to get the S060 out of the siding, it's a matter of putting it into reverse and going and coupling up the carriages that we're going to be taking on today's job. Everything was looking good at this stage, and we were highly confident that the task ahead was going to be easily achievable. How wrong we were. Still, we managed to couple everything up okay. And with that being done, it was just a matter of going off to the office one more time and validating our job, and then we could really get underway. With everything set, we headed back to the Loco and got underway. The reassuring chuff, chuff, chuff of the engine indicated everything was going great so far. Hey, this is pretty easy, I thought. So far, it appears the greatest challenge is in trying to keep an eye on all of your pressures, your fire level and your water levels, whilst at the same time trying to keep an eye out on the road ahead. No wonder steam trains always had a driver and a fireman, but in Derail Valley, you're both. Time to check the fire. It's hard to know exactly the right time to shovel more coal in. You don't want to overload the firebox, but at the same time, you also don't want to be running out of coal. Everything appears to be going perfectly at this stage, although I have noticed that I've maybe put a little bit too much water into the boiler. So I'm going to use the blowout valve just to get rid of a little bit, so that at least I can see the water level appear within the water gauge. I was so delighted with the way that the locomotive was performing in this my first drive that I decided to yank on the whistle and let everybody know my joy as I was passing across the river. So it was around about this time that I started noticing that my speed was dropping even though my temperatures and pressures were all looking really good. I could only assume that perhaps we're on an uphill gradient, but it didn't seem sufficient to account for this sudden drop in speed, and it would only get worse. So now I've entirely stalled, and what's even worse is I'm starting to roll backwards even though I've got my regulator and reversers all the way forward. So I do the only thing that I think that I can do at this point in time is I'm going to allow the locomotive to move backwards until we get to a flatter section of land once more and try to start off once again. Once stopped, I add coal to the fire, check my temperatures and pressures once more, and then prepare to try to start off again. But it was no good. It seemed it didn't matter what I did. The engine was being dragged back by the weight of the carriages, but at 309 tonne, surely the S060 had sufficient traction power to pull it up this relatively slight gradient. Seems it wasn't the case though. So at this stage I was basically at my wit's end. It seemed odd that we couldn't haul this relatively light load up a hill, that it would drag us backwards, and even worse, it appeared that my pressures were dropping, even though I'd been attending to the fire and the water fairly diligently. I don't know what's causing it. So now that we've managed to come to a stop due to the powers of gravity, let's just try one last time to see if we can't get some speed up and mount this very slight gradient. And so we managed to start moving, albeit very, very slowly. The engine started drumming out the traditional beat. I think I can. I think I can. I think I can. I'm guessing that the sparks flying out of the chimney funnel is probably not a good sign, but at least we were moving. And as long as we could maintain that progress, we didn't have that far to go. So I was cautiously optimistic we might overcome this hurdle. But it was not to be. With one final chuff, our locomotive came to a complete stop. It would be the final one that it would ever make. Of course, I didn't just leave things there. I tried to diagnose exactly what was going wrong. It was when I brought up the control panel that I saw the devastating truth. It appears we were out of water. Not wishing to leave things to chance, I decided to go outside and check the water tanks visually. When I opened up the hatch, sure enough, I saw nothing. I knew it was dangerous to run out of water and still have a lit fire, so I decided to jump back in the cab and to drop the fire. But it was too late. You get the idea. So that was the tale of the little engine that should have, could have, but in the end just couldn't. Why? We'll have to diagnose in a future episode. In the meantime, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next exciting episode of Grandpa Playing Games.